discuss the new Hong Kong security law recently passed, which really threatens to undermine the entire essence of Hong Kong as being really a separate jurisdiction where freedoms are enjoyed by not only the citizens of Hong Kong, but visitors as well. With the Hong Kong security law having passed and China now having the option to simply arrest those in Hong Kong, whether they be citizens or tourists, because they've spoken against the government, for example, it really is a game changer, and I believe it will have a devastating effect long term on Hong Kong, not only for citizens and residents of Hong Kong and businesses in Hong Kong, but also furthermore for tourism in Hong Kong. For example, the fact that I'm making this video right now, which is quite critical of this new law passed by China that affects the people of Hong Kong and those transiting through or visiting, the fact that I'm being critical of China, I suppose, means that if I were to go to Hong Kong on vacation at some point, I could perhaps be arrested for being critical of China. And that is pretty frightening, I would say. And not only that, even transiting through Hong Kong, perhaps if you end up in the database as someone who's been critical of China and you're transiting through on a connecting flight through Hong Kong, as so many thousands of people do every day, perhaps just transiting through you could be potentially arrested. So essentially what this means is those who are critical of the government, critical of China, may be arrested, and not just arrested for days or weeks or months or years, but potentially it can carry a sentence of life in prison. So this is really devastating. Now, what I've seen globally in many countries is new laws and acts that have been passed or that are pending final passage that essentially have undermined various degrees of freedom and expanded definitions of certain types of actions. So the bottom line, without going into specific country by country, is that I feel that during this time of the pandemic, unfortunately, while we've all been on lockdown, certain governments have exploited our weakness and our limitations in being basically trapped in our homes for so long and limited in freedom of movement, that we have essentially ended up at a point where we've lost so many freedoms as we awaken to the new world order, to the new normal. We have contact tracing in our phones that can be activated through API, through apps, by governments, by hackers, by who knows who, that can keep track retroactively from the point it was installed forward, but for all of time, our movements, our locations, those who we were interacting with, those who we were close to, where we were and when. And it's not something that's looking forward, it's something that's looking back. So it would be recording and archiving in a cloud somewhere all of this data, so that when governments need to contact trace, obviously they need to be able to go backwards and see where you've been and when. So this is something that is clearly recording. That's something that's happened. There's been expansion of various freedoms of governments to essentially expand surveillance. For example, right now in America, FISA legislation is alive and well, making web browsing history, such as what you search for on Google and Yahoo, etc., not private. Law enforcement can access it to see what you've been searching for. And it's not just that they're watching every single person on what you're searching for, it's that it's archived, it's in the cloud, it's somewhere on a server, and certain keywords and certain searches that you type in may put you on certain lists and certain categories that group you with certain individuals that think certain ways and make you deemed by bots and AI as some type of a high-risk person, when actually you just have a curiosity about something. And so all of this serves to undermine the privacy rights and the freedoms of law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. And as usual, the villains of the world go untouched by these new measures, since they are able to live their lives in such a way as to outsmart, outmaneuver, and really overcome these obstacles. But the rest of us that are truly just going about our lives, living normal lives, are faced with loss of privacy in so many different ways. And various governments around the world have criminalized certain types of behaviors that used to not be criminal in nature. And so the Hong Kong security law essentially does that, with freedom of speech not being free at all anymore. If you say the wrong thing, you can spend life in prison. And China's not the only country that has done this. It's really somewhat of a trend, I feel, that we have given up so many freedoms, and unfortunately it happened at a time when humanity globally was at their very weakest point. Lockdown, confined, no freedom of movement, limited freedom of information even, glued to mainstream media, while lawmakers are busy passing laws and acts in various countries around the world, and freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, just basic general assumptions of privacy that we have been put into question. So in any case, I will be avoiding Hong Kong personally. As much as I would like to spend time in Hong Kong, I don't think I'll be transiting through Hong Kong. That means I probably won't be traveling on Cathay Pacific Airlines, which transits through Hong Kong. Why? Well, because I've had various videos that are critical of China, such as one video where I discussed the high probability that the novel coronavirus originated at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China, and that China had advanced knowledge that could have saved tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives and millions of infections around the world had they disclosed this immediately. And the fact that it appears, based on the position of America, the US government and the President of America at this time, that it is a man-made virus. So saying that right there means I better not go to Hong Kong, or I may end up spending life in prison, or maybe I'll get lucky and only spend 50 years or 20 years or a few years, or at the very least maybe be interrogated. So bottom line, no more China, no more Hong Kong, no more Cathay Pacific for me. And I just wonder who else will have the same thought process. Countries around the world are offering various types of paths to citizenship for residents of Hong Kong, including those who are peaceful protesters, even being able to obtain essentially what amounts to refugee type status in various countries, including in Europe, in Australia. It's under consideration in America, and it looks like it's going to happen all over. So the world is reaching out to protect those of Hong Kong, and it makes me wondering what's next. Is Taiwan on the list? Is Taiwan going to be the next country that suffers the plight of Hong Kong? We'll see what happens next, but China's already made a lot of arrests, and who are they arresting? Are they arresting true criminals? No, they're arresting those that have exercised freedom of speech and been critical of the government. Now, in my personal opinion, no matter where you are in the world, freedom of speech is quite valuable when people decide to go into politics, when people decide that they want to run for office and seek the vote of the population to become elected, and they win the election, and they're serving in positions where they've taken an oath of office to serve the public, whether they be a senator, a congressman, a mayor, a president. In my opinion, they have an obligation to the people, and they open themselves up to being criticized by the people and praised by the people. There are many benefits to being in public office, but one of the disadvantages is that you're in the public domain now, and people can speak freely about you. They can say good things and they can say bad things. But when you make that illegal and criminalize it so that being critical of elected officials can end up placing you in prison, I think that's a real problem. Now, in China, of course, the whole election process is quite a bit different. I realize that, and in various countries it's quite a bit different as well. But why are world leaders so afraid of having people say things about them that are negative? Why is that such a bad thing? Freedom of speech, collaboration, dialogue, and debate are just cornerstones of what makes humans human. We talk about things, we figure things out, we share opinions, we don't always see things the same way. Stifling that is just extremely counterproductive to any form of progress, and it's baffling that in this day and age, governments are still so concerned about people saying certain things that they would pass laws to imprison people simply based on harmless words spoken by mouth that involve no actions whatsoever. Thank you so much for joining this episode. Please take a moment to click subscribe, click the bell and all for notifications. And if you found this helpful, please click like. Hope to see you next time. Goodbye.